This is the chuck primal. It's got you're going to have your foreshank, your blade section, and your shoulder clod. There used to be a term out that was called boxed cattle, and that's what the packers did. They didn't do near this kind of labor to a carcass. They would break it into the subprimals, the chuck, the round, the loin, and the rib, and ship it as large pieces, one cut down from this. And that's how they sold a lot of what they called market-style cattle. A lot more retail butchers around then, a lot more people that wanted to do this kind of labor to it because they custom designed and did their own products. Again, the packers will take the shank meat and they'll use that as a lean additive for ground beef. Even the bones are crushed and turned into bone meal. They don't waste anything. Taking the paddle bone out? Okay. Now I'll take the shoulder clod off, which breaks into the 3 new cuts, which is the two biggest additions that have gotten the most press are the flat iron and the shoulder tender. And there's the clod heart also. It's not quite as aggressively being sold because it's a little bit tougher to merchandise it. Yes, sir.
Is each person, ladies have each person making the same cut over and over, and the next guy does another cut?
Correct. Yeah, it's highly streamlined. Manny just pulled out the paddle bone, and there's a guy that's all he's doing is pulling paddle bones out. And the different cuts, they each do one motion, and then probably the most intricate one is pulling the whole tenders out of the loins.
He makes 8 salaries.
Yeah.
Chuck tender.
That's not the shoulder tender, that's the chuck tender. Mock tender. There's always at least 2 names for everything. What's left here is the blade section of the animal, and it's where you pull your chuck roll from. This is the hardest bone to remove off the entire animal. It's very intricate. It's got lots of indentions, a lot of stuff you've got to follow the seam on. This is where carpal tunnel was created.
What's the name of that?
That is the that's the main vertebra on the chuck. This is why we buy Portion Control. Portion to us is the box beef subprimals. How much labor what?
How much labor do you think the user saves by buying the pre-cut versus trying to do
I tell you what, it's not so much even the labor anymore, it's the fact of the precision and the consistency you get. I mean, that's the thing. It's especially a multi-unit, it's tough to recreate a Manny in every single store. I mean, you got absolute control of this, and it's going to be plus or minus a half an ounce, and you've got that kind of consistency and control over it. That's your trim chuck roll. Major player in chuck rolls is Korea, so that's part of the reason we've had some of the market fluctuations we've had lately.
They're buying them?
They were, the export market is closed to U.S. product in Asia, so they're working diligently to get it back open. That would be your shoulder tender right there. Or the Terrace Major. That's the actual name for it. That's it. There's two of those. What's that? That's your petite filet, your bistro medallion comes from that. The cattle folks were trying to come up with new ways to use the chuck and the round, obviously because the middle meats are getting so high. But I mean, it's tough if you get a major player on one of those. One 60-pound box is like 45 head of cattle. So it's really makes it difficult to sell some volume there. That's your flat iron. The way it comes to us now, they're starting to separate some of it out and take some of the sinew and stuff off because you can't just steak that product. You have to actually fillet it from there. There's a seam or some sinew that runs right through the middle of it that it's almost impossible to cook it that way. You couldn't eat it.
So from that one flat iron, you actually get 2 pieces of meat?
Yes, ma'am.
Choke it.
That's your
Choke it.
the nude clod? Okay. That's your shoulder clod. Or your clod heart. That some guys are cutting what they call a pub steak out of. And it's more of it's got a different bite to it. It's not near as tender. With this export market like it is, that's not helping us on the carcass side. They have what they call the drop credit, which is everything you sell, all the stomach, the kidneys, the livers, all the offals help carry the value of that animal. Well, when there's no export market anymore, you can't do anything with it but what we call render it or tank it. So you took all that to zero, so the value of that animal has to be carried by the carcass itself. And that's why some of our pricing is so out of whack right now. There's no value to tripe and kidneys and livers, and that's 20% of the animal weight, and it's carrying zero value now. Politics. That's really all it are. In the same amount of time that it's been closed for 2 years or 3 years, the same amount of time, Japan has had more BSE fines than we have. So for them to say our food supply isn't safe, it doesn't make any sense. That's what you got to make a flat iron steak out of, 2 of those pieces.